here we are today. I wanted to talk about how we go with fresh herbs just picked from the garden. This is oregano. I've got a huge bowl of it. To dried herbs like this in a jar that are all ground up and ready to use in your recipes. So these are all from my garden, and these are different herbs. I've got basil. I didn't actually grind these when I was done. I may go back and do that. Sage, same. I usually put this in a mortar and pestle and kind of grind it up as I use it. I have thyme, rosemary, parsley. I did this yesterday. I love how bright green it is. And oregano. So I will use at least this much oregano in a year. So I wanted to go ahead and do some more since I have plenty in my garden. So I have a dehydrator. This is a really simple, really cheap dehydrator. It doesn't have a fan in it. It just has a little heating element down in the bottom. And I use it for all kinds of things, from veggies and fruits to herbs. But because it doesn't have a fan, it takes a little longer than some dehydrators. So a lot of times what I'll do is, especially if I'm stacking it all the way up, I will come back and rotate my trays out so that the top ones are down closer to the element, about halfway through. So the first thing that we do is I just pick the herbs and I leave them on the stems and I put them on the trays. I don't want them too full because you want some of the air to get up in there and you want them to dry pretty quickly. Last time I did oregano was yesterday, and I think I let it dry about 18 hours. And I had it done today. This morning when I got up, it was done. So that's about how full I make a tray. I just put them in there. As you can see, there's plenty of space to come up through, for the air to come through and the heat to come through and get those dried out. And then I'll just put another tray on top of it like that, and just keep stacking until I've got all of this stacked onto the dehydrator. Yesterday I did about half the trays of oregano and half of parsley, and that's what I ended up getting in my pint jars after it was all ground. Of course, there was a huge bowl of each when I started. So we'll come back after these are dry and I've got all of this done, and I will show you how I take them off the stems and then how I grind them up so that they're ready to use. We are the next morning after getting our herbs dried. I'm going to take them off the trays and you'll see how they look. These are very, very brittle now. The leaves are going to come off really easy. So I want you to see how they look when they're dry. What I do is I just hold the fat end of the stem and rub my fingers down, and everything comes off. And that way you're getting just the leaves, not the hard stems, and you can kind of just rub. And I'm telling you, they're super brittle. This is a very, very gentle, barely touch it kind of process. And all these leaves will come off, and it'll look kind of like this in the bowl. And it's just got these little leaves like this. Alrighty, and once we get these all done, I will show you how we're going to process them. You can use a mortar and pestle if you have one, but I use a little food processor to get all the leaves chunked up so that we have, you know, something small that we can sprinkle on. I've got a bowl of leaves and a bowl of stems. As you can see, pretty much everything came off of that. This is a good time to kind of like pick through and see if you find any little stems, because even if they're ground up into small pieces, they could be kind of crunchy in your pizza sauce or your spaghetti sauce or whatever you're going to use your oregano for. So you want to make sure you don't have any stems in there. This is a little tiny food processor. There are tons like them. There's some made just for herbs. This is a KitchenAid. I got it on Amazon.com. I've also seen them at Costco. And it has a little top that goes on here and a motorized part with 3 speeds, and I put it on 3 here. This has other attachments as well, including an immersion blender, which we use for our bulletproof coffee, and a whisk. So today we're going to use it like this with our little blade in here, and I'm just going to put my herbs down inside here. This is oregano. The only herb that I've done that hasn't worked really well in this is rosemary. And for the rosemary, I use an old-fashioned mortar and pestle, and I just do it as I'm using it because I don't use a whole lot of rosemary, so I just grind it. And you can do that with this too if you don't have a food processor. But I like my herbs to be really convenient and ready to use, so I can just open the jar and measure out a teaspoon or whatever. I'm gonna put this in here. I'm gonna give it a quick spin, and it takes a couple before it gets really good and fine. So now we've got oregano that's ready to use. And it may be a little bigger than what you buy at the grocery store. The pieces may be, and it may not go through a shaker real well, but it's plenty small enough to use for cooking. So in 2 days' time, I have filled up this pint jar with oregano that I can use all throughout the year, even when my plants are dormant in the wintertime. And oregano is a perennial herb, so I planted it once about 3 years ago, and I mean, my plant is like this big, and I've pulled up half of it because it's just trying to take over my garden. So this is one of the cheapest ways that you can get herbs. That would be very expensive in the store, especially for something organic and pesticide free and so fresh. This is way fresher than anything you're gonna find in the grocery store, and it smells amazing.